First Class Productions.
1995 was a strange year to be a Sonic fan. It brought us the disappointing racing games Sonic Drift 2 and 3 Sonic spin-offs that didn't even feature Sonic. There was Knuckles Chaotix on the Sega 32X, Tails Sky Patrol, and Tails Adventure on the Game Gear. But the blue blur wasn't entirely absent. He made a solo appearance in Sonic Labyrinth, a Game Gear exclusive developed by Minato Gaiken and published by Sega. It was part of an experimental phase in Sonic's history where speed took a backseat and spin-offs spun out of control. As usual, I first played Sonic Labyrinth years after its original release thanks to the Sonic Mega Collection Plus for the PlayStation 2. I was baffled by the, let's say, unorthodox gameplay and never even finished the first zone. But today I'm giving it the GFrom treatment. Playing through the entire game, dissecting every level and trying to understand what exactly happened here. So join me as we take a slow, isometric stroll through one of the oddest entries in Sonic's long and confusing career.
From the gamer, the legend, he's come to show you the way in this world of games. GFrom Reviews.
Dr. Robotnik has a new plan. Not a space station, not a giant death machine. No, this time he's invented shoes. Specifically, he tricks Sonic into wearing a pair of slow-down boots, which, as the name oh so subtly implies, rob him of his ability to run fast. Yes, you heard correctly. That's like giving Mario a hat that cuts his jump height by 90%. With Sonic's defining trait effectively nerfed, Robotnik does what any self-respecting villain would do. He steals the Chaos Emeralds and locks them away inside his brand new super fortress, the Labyrinth of the World. Sonic, now moving at the pace of a moderately determined turtle, can no longer rely on his usual moves. No running, no jumping, just spin dash, over and over. The goal is to navigate a series of isometric mazes, recover the emeralds, and stop Robotnik's grand master plan. If you can call it that. It's not world domination, it's not turning animals into robots, it's more like vaguely inconveniencing Sonic. I mean, someone at Sega actually wrote this down and said, yes, that's the game. Sonic, the fastest thing alive, slowed down, on purpose. I admire the confidence, let's put it that way. Instead of the usual side-scrolling action, the game is presented in an isometric perspective, meaning everything looks like it's tilted 45 degrees, and Sonic now handles like a shopping cart with one broken wheel. The only thing Sonic can still do is curl into a ball and spin dash. That's your main form of movement, your main way to attack enemies, and pretty much the only thing keeping this from becoming a top-down walking simulator. You hold the button, Sonic charges up in place and then shoots off in a straight line until he hits a wall or an enemy or spirals off into space because you held it just a second too long. The goal in each stage is to collect 3 keys and bring them to the exit door before the timer runs out. That's it. No animals to rescue, no loop-de-loops, no giant gold rings at the end. Just keys, a door, and the faint echo of a hedgehog's dignity. Some keys are lying around in dead ends, others are locked behind enemies or hiding in corners you didn't know existed until you accidentally bounce into them. Picking one up rewards you with extra time on the clock, which is actually pretty useful since running out is a much bigger threat than anything else the game throws at you. Enemies, on the other hand, are rarely dangerous but endlessly annoying. You can knock them out with a spin dash, but they respawn quickly, meaning you'll often fight the same guy twice just for daring to pass through the same hallway again. If Sonic gets hit while holding keys, he drops them like rings and you have a few seconds to scramble and pick them up before they disappear. And when you have none, taking damage just punishes you by shaving 10 seconds off the clock. The time limit mostly isn't all that strict, but run out and you lose a life. And instead of traditional item boxes, you get floating triangles that flip in fixed intervals. These can give you power-ups like wiping out every enemy on screen, invincibility, a 1-up, extra time, and, unbelievably, speed shoes. Yes, speed shoes in Sonic Labyrinth. Proof that somewhere out there a hedgehog god is listening. The whole experience is about managing your time and not slamming your head against the wall. Literally. Sonic rebounds off every surface, and since you're constantly using the spin dash to move at any reasonable pace, you'll often find yourself ping-ponging around the level like a confused pinball. The controls are slippery and diagonal, which adds a layer of challenge when trying to aim at anything that isn't a wide open hallway. You never feel like you have full control over Sonic, which would be fine if the levels weren't so tightly packed with hazards and maze-like layouts. And yet for all that, at times there is something oddly satisfying about it. The game has a kind of puzzle rhythm where you have to figure out the optimal path through a stage, time your spin dashes just right, avoid the traps, collect the keys, and make it to the goal in one piece. Before we even start the game, Sonic Labyrinth greets you with a few settings. First, you can choose how many lives Sonic starts with. The maximum is 10. Why would I pick anything less than 10? To challenge myself?
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Then there are two options for key controls, strangest and slant. At first I had no idea what that meant, but it turns out strangest means if you press right, Sonic actually walks to the right from your perspective. On slant, pressing right makes him shuffle diagonally upright instead.
I immediately went with strict. I struggle with these controls enough as it is. I don't need the game gaslighting me about what direction right is supposed to be.
Sonic Labyrinth features 4 main labyrinths that serve as the zones of the game. Each one comes with its own theme, gimmicks, and boss. Labyrinth of the Sky is the first zone, and if that name sounds majestic, lower those expectations. What you actually get is a pastel-colored pinball machine suspended in the clouds, where Sonic awkwardly spin dashes through purple floors, yellow conveyor belts, and enough bumpers to make Casino Night Zone look like minimalism. The enemies barely qualify as obstacles. There are hardly any pits, and if you fall, the stage usually plops you back down into a lower level like a parent sighing at your mistake. The early acts are all about teaching you the controls. Springs launch you and dash tiles fling you around. The keys are usually placed in plain sight. Oh no, not this again. Sonic chaos all over. 530 kilometers per hour?
900 kilometers per hour? Hey! Does this look like 900 freaking kilometers per hour to you? At this point they're just trolling the player. That's exactly what I was about to say. I feel trolled. Good, then we agree. Goodbye. Thanks.
Level 1-4 switches things up. Whoa, it's so fast! For this stage, there's no time limit. Instead, Sonic barrels down a slope packed with rings to collect while smashing through random window frames that do nothing but slow you down. Collecting 100 rings still gives you an extra life. At the bottom, he drops through a chute straight into the boss arena. And here you face Mecha Gorilla. First, a bunch of smaller robotic apes hop around to soften you up, and then the big guy arrives, detaches his arms and throws them at you. That's his strategy. And believe it or not, I actually struggled with him. Those flying arms kept nailing me before I got used to the clunky controls, and every time I died, the game forced me to repeat the slope sequence again. It feels like padding. Once you finally land enough spin dashes, the mech collapses, you earn the first Chaos Emerald, and Sonic does his little celebration pose, presumably wondering how his career has reached this point. Labyrinth of the Sky works fine as an introduction. Aside from the boss, it's forgiving, gives you room to fumble with the controls, and sets the stage before the game starts getting meaner.
It's not exciting, but for a Sonic game where speed has been outlawed, it's at least a gentle enough beginning.
Labyrinth of the Sea is the second zone, and as the name suggests, we've now moved from the sky to the ocean floor. You'd think this means water physics and the usual drowning countdown, but no. The water here is purely aesthetic. Instead, you get the same isometric maze gameplay, only now dressed up with seashells, coral, and starfish glued onto the walls like an aquarium screensaver. The layouts are noticeably trickier than in the first zone. Gone are the wide open training grounds. Here you have longer corridors, more dead ends, and the game's first real attempts at confusing you. Doors teleport you across the map in ways that make it very easy to lose track of where you just came from. Then there are the cannons in Act 2-1. These contraptions shoot Sonic across the stage in predetermined arcs, sometimes dropping you in useful places and other times launching you face first into a wall. They look fun the first time, but after that you realize they're really just another way for the game to chew through your timer. Act 2-3 contains a rare treat, the game's only bonus stage. To unlock it, you have to find and activate a hidden switch which opens a path to a special exit door. Pull it off and Sonic gets whisked into a short extra round where you can scoop up rings. I immediately fell off the platform and was left with this empty feeling, wondering why this obscure bonus stage even exists.
Spoiler alert, it does serve a purpose, but I'm not telling you what it is yet.
At the bottom of Act 2-4 you face Connie Pearl? A giant hermit crab robot. The fight opens with a parade of smaller crabs scutting around and then the boss itself slides in. It paces back and forth across a narrow platform, giving you almost no room to dodge. The trick is simple. Wait for a gap and spin dash into its exposed side. Compared to the first boss, it's much more straightforward. Beat it and you earn the second Chaos Emerald. Sonic celebrates again, despite still wearing those cursed slow-down boots. Labyrinth of the Sea feels a little more demanding than the opening zone, but it's still pretty tame overall. The keys are easy enough, the boss is manageable, and the only thing that really got on my nerves were the cannons. Labyrinth of the Factory trades seashells and starfish for cold metal floors, glowing panels, and a neon city skyline in the background. At first glance, it looks more complicated than anything so far, with moving platforms, teleporters, and a busier layout that seems designed to send you in circles. But somehow, almost by accident, I found the keys and the exits in Act 3-1 and 3-2 in under 2 minutes each. The stages look like they want to be mazes, yet they kind of fold in on themselves if you happen to take the right path. That said, the factory does have its gimmicks. There are glowing electric floors that drag down Sonic into a crawl, lightning traps that zap corridors at set intervals, and the usual assortment of enemies placed mostly to annoy you. These hazards sound nasty, but they rarely slow you down for long. Act 3-3 was where things finally slowed down. I spent ages wandering around until I realized there was a moving platform tucked away in the bottom left corner, the one piece of level I managed to overlook. Once I noticed it, the rest of the stage clicked, but it definitely left me feeling like the design was trying to be more complex than it actually is. Zone 3-4 ends with a Needle Man, and no, not the one from Mega Man 3. That guy at least had a personality and a stage theme. This Needle Man is just a giant spiked block that slides around like a Roomba with anger issues. The fight begins with smaller spike blocks zipping across the screen, and then the main boss arrives. Its front is completely covered in spikes, so your only option is to circle around and hit its exposed back. It complicates things by firing spikes as projectiles, forcing you to keep moving and wait for an opening. It takes 10 hits to finish, but once you get the pattern, it's more of a grind than a real challenge. Beating Needleman gets you the third Chaos Emerald. It clears a zone that looks intimidating at first, but ends up feeling easier than Zone 2. The moving platforms, teleporters, and hazards give it the appearance of complexity, yet with a bit of luck, you can stumble onto the solution faster than expected. Labyrinth of the Castle wastes no time setting the mood. A gloomy fortress at night, stone walls, candles flickering, and a giant moon hanging in the background. Conveyor belts now act like waterfalls, dragging you off ledges. Teleporters are everywhere, warping Sonic around until you forget which way is up. And the hazard list reads like a medieval torture manual. Falling stalactites, arrows, guillotines, and ghostly fireballs drifting through the halls. The game has clearly saved its nastiest tricks for last. Act 4-1 looks intimidating, but turned out to be a joke. I beat it in under a minute, and for a brief moment I thought maybe the castle was not going to be as bad as its reputation. That optimism evaporated in Act 4-2. At one point I had to hunt down a switch on a balcony just to remove a barrier of glowing orbs blocking a key. At the end, the camera pans up to a giant clock above the goal door.
I have no idea why it does that, but I'm pretty sure it was just reminding me that my life is ticking away while I'm playing Sonic freaking Labyrinth.
Act 4-3 is where this game bears its teeth. This is a sprawling nightmare of copy-paste tiles, endless floors, and conveyor belts that all lead you back to places you already visited. I spent 16 minutes here, running in circles like an idiot, convincing myself I had found the right path, only to reappear in the same room I had already cursed at a minute earlier. It's the only level where I got multiple time overs, and each failure chipped away at my sanity. By the end, I was no longer playing to win. I was playing to see if I could outlast the game itself. Then comes Act 4-4, the grand finale. Sonic rockets down a slope smashing through clouds, and drops into the final arena where the Smiley Bomb awaits. A floating robot with a giant grinning face. It immediately pelts you with bombs before swooping in close enough to smack. After 10 hits it changes form, losing its lower half and switching to laser beams. For once it actually feels like a proper boss fight. The pattern, much like the first phase, is simple enough. Line yourself below it, spin dash when it drops. Another Another 10 hits and the smiley bomb explodes. Labyrinth of the Castle is a fitting finale, combining gimmicks from earlier zones, ramping up the hazards, and demanding careful play instead of blind pinballing. But Act 4-3 drained so much patience out of me that even the decent final boss could not fully redeem it.
After Smiley Bomb explodes, Robotnik does what he always does.
He panics, runs off, and drops the final Chaos Emerald like he suddenly forgot what pockets are for. Sonic grabs it, kicks off those cursed slowdown boots, and finally does what he was born to do. Run. Just run, run, run straight into the credits. All zones cleared, but it's not perfect.
Excuse me? Not perfect? What exactly was I supposed to do better here? Play with dignity?
Turns out that mysterious clock in Act 4-2 was not just there to remind me that my life was slipping away. If you finish the stage with more than 2 minutes left, you unlock one of the conditions for the perfect ending. Combine that with entering the hidden bonus stage in 2-3, and only then do you earn Sonic Labyrinth's so-called perfect ending. Okay, no big deal, I thought. Most of the game was easy enough. This time when I cleared 4-2, birds actually flew out of the clock, which felt like progress. The problem, of course, was that it also meant I had to play Act 4-3 again. And nothing in life prepares you for willingly replaying Act 4-3. Still, I powered through it, gritted my teeth, and finally unlocked the special ending. And what did I get for all that? The game flashes up the words, "It is perfect, wonderful." With enough exclamation points to make me suspicious, Sonic runs on a red road instead of the usual blue one, and then the game rewards you with a cheat code. It's more than most games of the era ever gave you. Of course I tried it, and it's a level select code, which is completely useless to me now that I have already finished the game twice, but still, the effort is appreciated. Aside from the normal game, there's also a time attack mode. It's basically Act 1-2 stripped of enemies and hazards, just Sonic rolling around a bare bones course against the clock. It's so unremarkable I almost didn't bother mentioning it, but now you have at least heard about it. You're welcome.
Let's move on to the presentation of Sonic Labyrinth.
For a Game Gear title, it actually looks fine. Each zone has its own distinct theme, and even the different acts within a zone shift their color palettes just enough to keep things from blending together. That alone stops it from becoming visually exhausting. The sprites are clean, Sonic's little spin dash animation is surprisingly smooth, and the overall look is colorful. It's not Sonic CD, but for 1995 handheld standards, I can't complain. The real problem is not what you see, it's how little of it you can actually see. The Game Gear's tiny resolution forces the camera to zoom in so close that half the hazards might as well be hiding in ambush just off screen. You roll forward and bam, damage from something you never had a chance to react to. The screen crunch is brutal. Trying to line up a precise spin dash is less like skillful navigation and more like blindfolded bumper cars. It's less isometric puzzle adventure and more guess what's on the next tile. Still, I have to give credit where it's due. The castle with its flickering candles look atmospheric, and Robotnik's lineup of bosses all add a goofy kind of charm. Well, except for Needleman. No charm found. So in the end, the visuals are a mixed bag. Distinct, colorful, and occasionally impressive, but forever sabotaged by the cramped field of view.
On a modern screen through a collection, it looks decent. On the original Game Gear, play long enough and I imagine I wouldn't be collecting Chaos Emerald but getting prescriptions for stronger glasses.
Audio is where the game shows both its strength and its limitations. Something I didn't really notice at first is that for the levels there are only 4 pieces of music, excluding bosses. But it's not like every act of a zone shares the same track. No, this time every Act 1 has the same music, then every Act 2 has the same music, and so on. I actually like this approach because it means you're not listening to the exact same song for the entire zone. It mixes things up, and for a handheld game, that's a smart decision. The soundtrack is not particularly memorable, but it's not unpleasant either. The melodies do their job, but they rarely stick in your head the way classic Sonic tracks usually do. Personally, like most Game Gear Sonic soundtracks from Sonic Chaos onward, the instrumentation is not my favorite. For example, I'm really not fond of the Act 1 music, which comes off more shrill than catchy. Or the Act Complete jingle, which is short, but somehow still irritating after hearing it enough times. I wouldn't call the soundtrack horrible or anywhere near the awfulness of Tails' Sky Patrol's music. There are even a couple of highlights. Act 3's music is surprisingly catchy, with a rhythm that at least keeps you moving. The final boss theme is a solid fit for the fight, building some actual tension and probably standing as the best track in the game. The ending theme deserves a mention too. The instrumentation is genuinely nice, and it feels like a rare moment where the Game Gear sound chip actually delivers something satisfying. Sound effects, on the other hand, are about as bare bones as they come. Sonic's spin dash has a little whir to it, keys make a chime, enemies pop when defeated, and the timer warning is just an obnoxious beep that drills into your skull. None of it adds atmosphere or charm, it just kind of exists. So the audio is a mixed bag. Not iconic, but not offensive either. It won't stick with you like 8-bit Sonic 1 and 2, but it gets the job done, and on a handheld like the Game Gear, sometimes that's enough.
Let's wrap this up slowly.
On paper, Sonic Labyrinth is one of the strangest experiments Sega ever attempted with a franchise. A Sonic game where you cannot run or jump sounds like a recipe for disaster, and yet the result is not quite that bad. The core idea of turning Sonic into a spin dash powered pinball through isometric mazes is at least unique, and for short bursts, it can even be entertaining. The 4 zones each have their own distinct look, and there's a certain charm in seeing Sega try something completely different at a time when they were throwing Sonic in every possible direction. But here's the thing, if you just spin dash around aimlessly, you are simply doing it wrong. Sonic Labyrinth expects you to take your time, learn the level layouts, and approach it like a puzzle game. And that might be the problem. Sonic is not a puzzle game, at least he never has been in spirit. Most players expect Sonic to be about speed, momentum, reflexes, and flow. Here, those ideas are stripped away, replaced with careful navigation, slow planning, and a timer that constantly punishes you for not already knowing where to go.
I've often said that I don't think Sonic games have to be all about speed, but this is taking it too far.
The walking speed in particular is almost insulting. Watching Sonic crawl across the screen at a snail's pace feels like the developers deliberately stripped away everything that made him appealing. Yes, the spin dash is your main tool, but when you actually need to walk, it's so sluggish it borders on parody.
As a concept, it might have worked with another character. With Sonic, it feels like a complete mismatch.
And yet for all that, Sonic Labyrinth is not completely worthless. The spin dash only movement does create a kind of puzzle rhythm where you have to figure out the optimal path, and there's a strange satisfaction in finally mastering a stage that had you completely stumped before. Still, that doesn't mean it's good.
It's not the total disaster its reputation suggests, but it's far from a hidden gem either.
At best, it's a strange diversion, and at worst, it's a reminder of why Sonic should never be slow. At least not this slow. I cannot wrap my head around the fact that this game even exists. Out of all the possible spin-offs Sega could have made in '95, they chose this. In my ranking of the Sonic games I've reviewed so far, I'm placing it between Tails Adventure and the Mega Drive version of Sonic Spinball. It's often deemed one of the worst Sonic games ever made, and while I think that's an exaggeration, I've definitely played worse, I also cannot defend it as anything more than below average. So my verdict is simple. Sonic Labyrinth is not as bad as I thought, but far from decent. It's a puzzle game that never really fit the character it stars.
I'd say it's worth a try if you're curious, but once you've seen what it has to offer, you'll probably want to take off your own metaphorical slow down boots and play something faster.
Hey everyone, this is GFrom. Thank you so much for watching episode 12 of season 5. Feel free to rate, comment, subscribe and follow me on social media. You can also support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member if you like. I'll see you later. Have a nice day.